The summons. The central chamber of the Galactic Council had witnessed 10,000 years of history. Empires had knelt here. Wars had ended here. Species had begged for mercy within these crystalline walls that seemed to hold starlight itself. Today, the Council expected another capitulation. High Arbiter Velshara of the Cromathi Empire stood at the center podium, her four eyes scanning the assembled delegates. Around her, representatives from 23 elder civilizations waited in their designated sectors, beings of gas, crystal, flesh, and pure energy. Each had ruled their corner of the galaxy for millennia before humans even discovered fire. "Let the record show," Velshara announced, her voice resonating through translation matrices, "that on this date, the species known as humanity has been formally summoned to answer for violations of established space law, unauthorized expansion, and refusal to submit technology for council review." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Zelfani delegation, beings of living crystal, chimed their approval. The Vorath, ancient warriors encased in biomechanical armor, simply watched with predatory stillness. At the far end of the chamber, the human delegation sat. 3 of them. Just 3. Velshara's secondary eyes narrowed. An insult or ignorance? For a summons of this magnitude, most species sent hundreds: advisors, lawyers, military attachés, cultural liaisons. The Cromathi alone had brought 47. The humans had sent 3 people in simple dark suits. Ambassador Eliana Vasquez sat in the center, a woman in her 50s with iron-gray hair pulled back severely. Her face was unreadable. To her left, Dr. James Chen, younger, carrying a data tablet. To her right, Commander Sarah Okonkwo, military uniform, hands folded calmly on the table. No fear in their eyes. That was unusual. "Humanity," Velshara continued, "you have been granted the extraordinary privilege of this hearing. The Council has reviewed your species' expansion over the past 2 standard centuries. We find your growth concerning." She gestured, and a holographic display erupted above the chamber. Star systems marked in human blue spreading like a virus through previously neutral space. 73 colony worlds, 14 mining operations in restricted asteroid fields, military vessels in 6 contested zones, and despite repeated requests, you have refused to submit your faster-than-light technology, your genetic modification protocols, and your artificial intelligence systems for mandatory council oversight. The Zelfani delegate chimed in, their voice like breaking glass. "Oversight is not optional. It is the price of civilization." A Vorath general stood, towering nearly 3 meters. "Your species is 237 years old in space. We have maintained order for 10,000. You are children playing with weapons you do not understand." More murmurs of agreement. Velshara raised her hand for silence. "Therefore, the Council presents the following terms, non-negotiable terms." The hologram shifted to display a document, thousands of pages compressed into scrolling text. 1. Humanity will cease colonization beyond the Sol system immediately. 2. All military vessels will be reduced to defensive orbital platforms only. 3. All human technology will be submitted to council evaluation and potential restriction. 4. Humanity will accept a council governance delegation with full authority over human space policy. 5. Compliance will begin within 30 standard days. She fixed all 4 eyes on Ambassador Vasquez. Failure to comply will result in economic sanctions, quarantine of human space, and, if necessary, military intervention to protect the galactic community from a rogue species. The chamber fell silent. This was the moment when the young species realized how small they really were, how powerless. The moment they understood that the galaxy had rules, and those rules were enforced. Valshara had seen it 100 times before. The shock, the panic, the desperate negotiation. Ambassador Vasquez stood slowly. She smoothed her jacket, adjusted her tablet, and then she looked directly at Valshara with eyes that held something the High Arbiter couldn't quite identify. Was it amusement? Ambassador Vasquez said, her voice clear and steady, "High Arbiter, on behalf of the United Earth Government and the Associated Colonial Administration, I have heard the Council's terms." A pause. The chamber leaned forward. "And our response is no." The word hung in the air like a detonation. Several delegates made sounds of shock. The Vorath general's armor clinked as he shifted in disbelief. Valshara's primary eyes widened. I don't think you understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Vasquez interrupted. "Something none had dared to do in this chamber for centuries. You've presented demands expecting surrender. You've threatened us with sanctions and military force. You've assumed we would simply comply because you're older, larger, and believe yourselves wiser." She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "You've made one critical error in your assessment." Dr. Chen tapped his tablet. A new hologram appeared, this one from the human delegation, overriding the Council's display through sheer technical audacity. The chamber erupted in outrage, but Valshara silenced them with a gesture. She needed to hear this, needed to understand what madness had possessed these humans. The hologram showed star maps, human colonies. But wrong. The data was wrong. You tracked 73 colonies. We have 218. The number appeared in the air, glowing. You identified 14 mining operations. We have 97. Another number. You detected our military vessels in 6 contested zones. Vasquez's smile turned cold. We have ships in 42 systems, including 3 you consider your core territory. Chaos erupted, delegates shouting, demanding explanations, calling for immediate military response. But Valshara just stared at the human ambassador, a chill spreading through her thorax. That's impossible," she whispered. Our monitoring systems are excellent, top-tier technology, which is why we spent 20 years figuring out how to fool them." Commander Okonkwo spoke for the first time, her accent crisp and precise. "Every system you detected was one we wanted you to detect. Every ship you tracked was one we allowed you to track. You've been watching shadows while we built an empire in the dark." The hologram shifted again. Human ships, sleek, strange, unlike any design the Council had cataloged. Weapon systems that bent light, colonies on worlds that should have been uninhabitable, technology that shouldn't exist for a species so young. "So, here are our terms," Vasquez said, her voice now carrying steel. "Non-negotiable terms." She began counting on her fingers. 1. The Council will recognize all human territory, all actual territory, as sovereign space. 2. You will cease intelligence operations in human systems immediately. 3. You will open trade negotiations as equals, not as masters to subjects. 4. You will never again attempt to limit human development, expansion, or technological advancement. 5. Compliance will begin within 7 standard days. The silence was absolute. Then Velshara laughed. She couldn't help it. The sheer audacity, the madness of it. "Or what?" she asked. "You're going to go to war? Against the combined might of 23 civilizations? Against fleets that number in the millions? Against species who have perfected warfare over millennia?" Ambassador Vasquez didn't laugh, didn't smile. She simply looked at Velshara with those cold, calculating human eyes. "No," she said quietly, "we won't go to war." Relief started to bloom in Velshara's chest. "We'll win one." And then the humans stood, collected their materials, and walked out of the central chamber. Behind them, they left chaos, confusion, and the first seeds of something the Council hadn't. The test. 41 hours after the summons. Council Military Command Center, Kronos Station. Fleet Commander Thaxiron of the Vorath Dominion studied the tactical display with the patience of a predator. His species had conquered 47 worlds before humanity had even left their caves. He had personally commanded fleets in 16 major conflicts. He knew bluffs when he saw them. "Status," he growled, his voice like grinding stone. His second-in-command, a Zelfani named Prism of Dawn, chimed her response. "The human colony designated New Horizon remains on schedule. Population 43,000, defensive capabilities minimal, 2 orbital platforms, outdated fusion missiles, no capital ships within 3 light-years." Perfect. Thaxiron's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "We're not here to start a war. We're here to remind children of their place." Around the command center, representatives from 7 council species monitored the operation. This was sanctioned, approved, a measured response to human defiance. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Blockade 1 minor human colony, cut off supply ships, wait 72 hours. When the colonists started rationing food, when panic set in, humanity would understand the cost of defiance. No shots fired, no casualties, just pressure. "The humans will scramble," predicted Ambassador Kelmar of the Scythoni Collective, his gas form swirling with confidence. "They'll protest through official channels, they'll threaten, but ultimately they'll negotiate." Their ambassador was performing for domestic consumption, theater. "Agreed," said High Arbiter Velshara, observing via hololink from the central chamber. "Begin the blockade, but Commander Thaxiron, remember this is a demonstration, not an invasion. We prove our strength, they accept reality, everyone moves forward." Thaxiron nodded. "As ordered, High Arbiter, fleet, advance to blockade positions." On the display, 12 Council warships moved into formation around New Horizon. Beautiful coordination, overwhelming force. The human colony's response came within minutes, a standard distress call, panicked civilian transmissions, desperate pleas for Council ships to withdraw. Exactly as predicted. "Human vessels are responding," Prism of Dawn reported. 3 cargo ships changing course. They're retreating, turning back toward Earth space." Perfect. The humans were already backing down. Thaxiron allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. War was expensive, bloody. This was better. A clean lesson that would save thousands of lives by preventing a larger conflict. "Maintain blockade formation," he ordered. "No hostile action unless fired upon. We wait." And so they waited. Hour 6 of the blockade. "Commander," Prism of Dawn chimed, uncertain in her crystalline voice, "sensors are detecting something." "Clarify." "Small anomalies, gravitational fluctuations at the edge of the system. Could be sensor ghosts, but..." "Recalibrate sensors," Thaxiron ordered. probably debris from the asteroid belt. But the fluctuations didn't disappear. They multiplied. Hour 12. Commander, Prism of Dawn's voice had lost its calm. We have contacts, multiple contacts entering the system. The tactical display erupted with red markers. Ships, dozens of them. No, hundreds of them. Faxiron surged to his feet. Identification. Human signatures, but, Commander, these vessel classifications don't match any in our database. New designs, unknown capabilities. The red markers spread across the display like blood and water, surrounding the Council blockade fleet in a perfect three-dimensional sphere. Thaxiron's combat instincts screamed at him. This was wrong. This was all wrong. Communications, he barked. Hail the human fleet. Static. Then a voice. Calm, professional, female. Council vessels, this is Admiral Lisa Zhao of the United Earth Navy 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. You are in violation of sovereign human space. You have 12 hours to withdraw beyond the territorial boundary. Thaxiron's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. Admiral Zhao, your force is impressive, but sensor analysis shows most of your vessels are destroyers and frigates. My fleet includes 4 dreadnoughts. You're outgunned. A pause. Commander, did you say your sensors show destroyers and frigates? Confirmed. Another pause, then something that might have been a sigh. Commander Thaxiron, I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to show you what you're actually looking at. Consider it a professional courtesy. The human ships changed. Stealth fields dropped, sensor masking dissolved, and the tactical display recalculated. The destroyers were dreadnoughts, the frigates were carriers, and the signatures that had read as scout ships, impossible, Thaxiron whispered. They were something new, something that Council had no classification for. Ships that seemed to bend space around them, that flickered in and out of normal detection, that radiated energy signatures suggesting power cores that shouldn't be possible for a species so young. Final count. Prism of Dawn's voice was barely audible. 374 capital ships. Estimated firepower exceeds our fleet by a factor of 12. The command center had gone silent. You built this in secret, Thaxiron said, trying to keep his voice steady. You've been preparing for war. No, Commander. Admiral Zhao's voice was sad, almost regretful. We've been preparing for you. There's a difference. You can't possibly maintain a fleet this size, Ambassador Kelmar interjected, his gas form swirling with agitation. The economic burden, the logistics, the crew requirements would be insurmountable, Zhao agreed, if we crewed them the way you do. On the display, data packets began transmitting. Human military doctrine, fleet composition analysis, technological white papers, not classified, not secret, just given. Dr. Chen's voice came over the channel, presumably from his position on Zhao's flagship. Commander, you're looking at 70% autonomous vehicles, AI-assisted navigation, targeting, and tactical coordination. Each ship requires only 12 human crew members for oversight and final authorization. AI systems of that sophistication are forbidden, Velshara cut in, her hologram materializing on the bridge. The AI accords are not binding on non-signatory species, Chen interrupted. We never signed. And respectfully, High Arbiter, we've watched too many civilizations fall to AI rebellion in your records. We learn from your mistakes. Our systems are different, better, safer. You're lying, Thaxiron growled. This is an elaborate hoax, sensor manipulation.
Is it? Admiral Zhao asked. Then test us. Fire on one of our ships. Any ship. See what happens. Every instinct Thaxiron had developed over 4 centuries of warfare screamed at him not to take that dare. You're bluffing, he said. Am I? Commander, you have a translator matrix in your cerebral cortex, correct? Allows you to understand multiple languages in real time? Yes. Who made it? Thaxiron blinked. The Scythoni Collective, standard military issue. Wrong, Chen said cheerfully. It's human-made. We've been manufacturing 90% of the Council's translation technology for the past 40 years. We just let the Scythoni take credit and handle distribution. Ambassador Kelmar's gas form turned an ugly purple color. Your medical scanners, Chen continued. Human components. Your data compression algorithms. Human designed. Your... Enough. Velshara's voice cracked like a whip. This is irrelevant. Commander Thaxiron, you have overwhelming force authorization. If the humans refuse to stand down... Commander Thaxiron said quietly, I'm recommending immediate withdrawal. Silence on the channel. You what? I'm a soldier, not a politician, Thaxiron said, his eyes never leaving the tactical display showing 374 human warships in perfect formation. This is unacceptable. You have your orders. My orders were to demonstrate strength. Mission accomplished. The humans have demonstrated...
Population 340,000. No, Muralta said flatly. No, this is sensor error. This has to be. But the data was verified, triple-checked, real. The humans had built their colonies in orbital rings, massive structures circling the planet just above the atmosphere, using the planet's own volcanic fury to generate power. Electromagnetic harvesters pulling energy from the radiation storms, heat exchangers turning the planet's thermal output into usable energy. But the truly insane part? They're mining, Muralta said, her voice hollow. They've sent drones to the surface, autonomous systems that can survive for 17 minutes before melting. They retrieve rare elements from the volcanic flows and return them to orbit for processing. Why? Selleck asked. Why would anyone choose to live there? Muralta pulled up the resource analysis. Because the volcanic activity brings rare earth elements to the surface at concentrations found nowhere else in this sector. Elements critical for advanced manufacturing. They're getting materials in 1 year that would take a traditional mining colony 50 years to extract. She sat back, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. They're not just surviving on death worlds, they're choosing them deliberately. They're going to the worst planets in known space and turning them into advantages. Council emergency session, 12 hours later. Muralta stood before the assembled council, her presentation floating in the air above them. In summary, she said, trying to keep her voice steady, we have confirmed 218 human colonies. Of those, 67 are on worlds we classify as uninhabitable. Not difficult, not challenging, uninhabitable. High Arbiter Velshara leaned forward. Explain how this is possible. I can't. Not fully. Muralta gestured to the data. Every colony shows the same pattern. They identify a world with extreme conditions but valuable resources. They adapt to that world through a combination of genetic engineering, technological innovation, and what I can only describe as controlled insanity. Controlled insanity? Ambassador Kelmar's gas form swirled skeptically. They're evolving themselves, Muralta said bluntly. Not over generations, in real time. Genetic modifications to handle higher radiation, bone density enhancement for high-gravity worlds, lung capacity alterations for thin atmospheres. And they're doing it ethically. All modifications are voluntary, reversible, and extensively tested. She pulled up medical records redacted by the humans, but enough remained to paint a picture. On New Reykjavik, 30% of the colonists have opted for enhanced cold resistance. On Poseidon's Reach, 70% have increased oxygen efficiency. They're specializing, creating variants optimized for specific environments while remaining fundamentally human. The chamber erupted in debate. The Zelthani called it an abomination. The Vorath called it warfare preparation. The Scythoni called it fascinating. Faxeron, present via HoloLink, simply asked, how long have they been doing this? Based on genetic markers, approximately 180 years, since before first contact. They were planning this from the beginning, Thexeron said quietly. They knew they'd need to compete with species who had millions of years of evolutionary optimization. So they accelerated. It's not just that, Miralta continued, pulling up her final piece of evidence. We need to talk about colony designate Echo 7. She displayed a world that made several council members gasp. Colony, New Prometheus. Location, Rogue Planet. No stellar designation. Classification, impossible. A rogue planet, ejected from its solar system, drifting through interstellar space. No sun, no heat source, temperature approaching absolute zero. Completely dark, completely isolated. Population, 89,000. This shouldn't exist, Velshara said. Nothing can survive on a rogue planet. They're not surviving, Miralta said quietly. They're thriving. They've enclosed the entire colony in a dome, generated an artificial biosphere, created fusion reactors that mimic a sun. They're maintaining an Earth-normal environment on a planet with no external energy source whatsoever. Why? Demanded a Chromathi general. What possible strategic value? None! Miralta interrupted. There's no strategic value, no rare resources, no tactical positioning. According to the colony charter, which they've made public, they did it to prove it could be done. She let that sink in. They colonized an impossible world as an experiment. The chamber fell silent. But here's the part that concerns me most, Miralta continued, pulling up her final piece of evidence. Each of these colonies is in contact with the others, sharing data, sharing innovations. The cold resistance genetics from New Reykjavik are being tested on Inferno Prime for heat resistance. The pressure adaptation from Poseidon's Reach is being combined with radiation resistance from Dragon's Forge. She pulled up a network diagram showing data flowing between colonies in an impossibly complex web. They're not just adapting to individual worlds, they're building a library of adaptations, creating a genetic and technological toolkit that would let them colonize any world, under any conditions. Ambassador Kelmar finally understood. They're preparing to outcompete us everywhere. No, Thaxiron said grimly, they're preparing to outlast us. Think about it. Every council species is optimized for specific environmental ranges. The Chromathi need low-gravity worlds. The Scythoni need gas-rich atmospheres. The Vorath need high metal content for our bioarmor symbiosis. He gestured to the human colony data. Humans are making themselves into the universal colonizer. Give them 100 more years and there won't be a single habitable or currently uninhabitable world they can't settle. Velshara stood, all four eyes wide open with realization. They're not trying to conquer us militarily. They're going to surround us demographically, economically. They'll be on worlds we can't reach, extracting resources we can't access, adapting to environments we can't survive. She looked around the chamber. In 1,000 years, when they have 10,000 colonies and we're still maintaining our traditional territories, they'll own the galaxy without firing a shot. New Prometheus, Colonial Administration Center. Governor Marcus Aquifer reviewed the council's surveillance data with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. Of course they'd been watching. Humans had been watching them right back. His communicator chimed. Ambassador Vasquez. They figured it out. The colonization strategy? About time. We weren't exactly subtle.
Marcus, they're terrified. Half the council wants to quarantine us. The other half wants to negotiate. Good. Fear means respect. Respect means leverage. I looked out at New Prometheus, a city on an impossible world, lit by artificial suns, maintained by human ingenuity and sheer refusal to accept the word can't. Elena, you know what the real joke is? Tell me. We're not doing this to beat them. We're doing this because it's necessary. Earth is overcrowded. Sol system is packed. We need space to grow, and the only space left is the space everyone else said was worthless. He gestured to his frozen, sunless world. We're not conquerors. We're the species that looks at hell and says, yeah, but have you considered air conditioning? Vasquez laughed, actually laughed. I'll use that line in the next negotiation. Marcus, are we going to war? A long pause. I don't know, she admitted. We're trying to avoid it, but the council is fracturing. Some see opportunity, some see threat. And we're walking a tightrope trying to convince them we're the former while proving we're prepared to be the latter. Marcus looked at his impossible city, full of people who had voluntarily chosen to live on a frozen rock in the middle of nowhere just to prove humanity could. He said, if it comes to war, they'll learn what every Earth nation that ever underestimated us learned. What's that? That humans don't fight fair. We fight smart. We adapt. We overcome. We turn disadvantages into advantages, and then we keep going until there's nothing left to overcome. He smiled. They think they've seen what we can do? Elena, we're just getting started.